It's about a possessed cat, and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more book and music, mostly Taylor Swift related content. 2022, I decided, is going to be the year I start doing monthly book wrap-ups. Prior to this point, I had only kind of just done a yearly book wrap-up, and that was it, and kind of like recommendation videos sprinkled in. But I've had a few people request that I do monthly wrap-ups, so this is the first one I'm ever doing, my January 2022 wrap-up. This was a really good month for me. I ended up reading 13 books. Last year I was reading Harry Potter for the very first time at the very beginning of the year, so that really bogged me down, but we're off to a really great start this year. So the very first book I read this month was Under Rose-Tainted Skies by Louise Gournal. This book is about a 17-year-old named Nora who is struggling with agoraphobia, so she has severe anxiety that prevents her from going outside. She also is diagnosed with OCD and tends to hyperfixate on all the things that can go wrong. I'd say the mental health representation is done pretty well in this book. Sometimes when reading books about this topic, I start to think like, well, we can't be picky. There's not that much out there. However, there is good stuff out there. We need to be raising our standards, I think. This book also incorporates some romance into it. Basically, the entire plot revolves around this boy who moves in next door, who is going to Nora's old school that she can no longer attend due to her mental health issues. He basically takes a huge interest in Nora because she is his next door neighbor. He starts coming over and trying to talk to her, and she wants to stay inside the house, so they kind of communicate through the shut door. They slide notes to each other through the mail slot. Eventually, he starts being able to come inside the house. She becomes comfortable with this, and they have these movie nights together. This book also shows Nora's appointments with her therapist and some of the ways that she is coping. I saw some reviews where some people have criticized this book for being like another mental health book where the boy kind of like saves the girl who is mentally ill, but I really disagree with that. I think Nora is a really badass female character, and there is a shift in her character development that comes along. Obviously, you want to see that in a book. A character that doesn't develop isn't going to be that interesting, but it's really not from Luke. It's from another event that happens in the book that ends up being very pivotal for Nora. So I just disagree with those reviews. I had a really good time reading this. I would rate it 5 stars, but I ended up giving it 4 because there is a very sudden climax at the end that seems kind of rushed, I guess. However, it was a really well-written book. I appreciated Nora's relationship with her mom. It was really easy to root for this character. The next book I read was All the Things That Could Go Wrong. So this was kind of a middle grade sort of book. This is another mental health related book where there are these two, I think like 12 or 13-year-old boys. One is like the bully and the other is the victim of the bully. So Alex is the victim and Dan is the bully. Alex deals with OCD. Dan has a lot of anger issues. It's so wild to read about Dan's friend group bullying Alex because it's like, this is seriously fan behavior. Like as a 23-year-old, it is so ridiculous the lengths that middle school bullies will go to like follow their victim around and like know their whole routine and schedule. It's like very much like stalking behavior. I'm so glad I'm out of that phase of my life, honestly. You think it's something wrong with you, but in reality, it's the bully who's got problems. Like, why are you following me around? Like, don't you have a life? The whole premise of this book is that Dan is building a raft, which is a project that he started with his brother. His brother is not present in the book. I'm not going to spoil exactly why, but it kind of makes it sound like he ran away. That was my assumption at first. And this project is basically something Dan really wanted to do with his brother Ben. But then Dan and Alex's parents start getting close and becoming friends with each other, and Dan's parents decide, oh, we should have Alex come over and help Dan with this raft. So they have to work together like every single weekend, I think it is, because their parents are pushing them into this extracurricular activity together. I don't understand why these two boys just don't tell their parents like, hey, you can be friends with their parents, but I really don't like this kid. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when adults write books about preteens or teenagers, they think they're a lot worse at communicating than I think they actually are. Anyways, you can probably guess these two boys end up becoming friends and bonding over their struggles. Neither of these characters were particularly super likable. It's frustrating to read from a bully's point of view. I don't know, maybe this would be really good for someone who is around this age group. It just wasn't that exciting. It wasn't that intriguing as far as the characters went. I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. I think it was just okay. So the next book I read was The Unfinished Garden. Looking back, I feel like this was the worst book that I read in the last month. I initially rated it 3 stars, but I think I might bump that down to 2. This was a Harlequin romance, and I did not realize that until I finished it. There was a lot of weird, cringy romance about it. This has to do with a widow whose passion is gardening. She has a gardening business in North Carolina and is also dividing her time up between that as well as taking care of her young son Isaac. She ends up meeting this attractive, successful software developer named James. James struggles a lot with anxiety, fears, compulsions. I was really on a mental health book kick here in the beginning of the year, but basically he seeks out Tilly, the previously mentioned gardener, and asks her to pretty much create a garden for him, and he becomes really fixated on this idea. She doesn't really want to do it, and then a family emergency ends up taking priority. She has to travel back to England to her childhood home. There's a lot of hometown drama going on, but basically James ends up kind of following her to England, very overstepping boundaries considering she has met this man one time. It kind of flows like a soap opera, I'm not going to lie. I guess the characters were okay and it was interesting. I wasn't bored at any point. However, there were definitely just weird ass cringy romance, I guess Harlequin style descriptions. James has a nip slip in front of Tilly. She describes his nipple and I hated every second of it. Yeah, I would say 3 out of 5, but I'm afraid I'm gonna have to bump that down to 2 out of 5. The next book that I read was Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. So this book is about the main character named Aza and her best friend named Daisy. Aza struggles with OCD. If you see a pattern going on here, there's a reason for that. This is probably one of the best representations of mental health I've seen in a book. John Green does it really well, and the explorations of Aza's mind were really well done. Aza has a fixation on her gut microbiome and obsessing about the bacteria that lives inside of her. There's a lot of weird philosophical connections that play into that, which is kind of what you would expect from John Green. So Aza's best friend Daisy hears about this billionaire who's gone missing. This billionaire actually is the father of Aza's childhood friend named Davis. There is a $100,000 reward related to this billionaire's disappearance, so if Aza and Daisy are able to find out some information and tell the police, they might be able to split that reward. So they end up interacting with Davis. Davis and Aza end up having a spark and a connection forming between them, but because this now becomes kind of like a friendship sort of thing, Aza decides she doesn't want to basically betray Davis's father. He's kind of in some trouble with the law, and that's why he kind of disappears. You know how billionaires go. So because of this, Davis pretty much pays off Daisy and Aza and says if you find out anything, please don't go to the police. I'm just gonna give you guys both $50,000. His whole life he's kind of been used for his money, so he pretty much is thinking if I give Aza this $50,000 and she never talks to me again, I'll know up front that it was just the money about me that she's interested in. But he kind of waits. Aza ends up coming back around and doesn't just want him for that $50,000. Daisy and Aza end up having some problems. Daisy likes to write fan fiction based on, I think it's Star Wars, and Aza ends up being a character in her fanfics, and she's not the most well represented. And then Aza ends up reading some of those fanfics, and that causes a rift between them. But Daisy kind of defends herself in saying you've never read my fanfics the entire time I've been writing them. She feels because of Aza's mental health issues, she's too consumed with herself and never pays attention to Daisy or anybody else. I don't know, I was really not liking Daisy at this point because it's she was really stressing that Aza was a burden because of her mental health, but also it's that's a really interesting avenue to explore. I think how this does put a strain on your friendships, and just because someone you're friends with is struggling with something like this doesn't mean that you need to put up with mistreatment, I guess. When Aza and Daisy end up getting that $50,000 from Davis, Aza really judges Daisy for going out and buying a car immediately and buying a laptop and kind of blowing all this money when Aza is putting it into savings. But it's Aza already had a car and a laptop and is just overall doing better off financially than Daisy. So that was just kind of tone deaf, I suppose. And Daisy calls her out for this. There were a lot of interesting things about this book, but I still ended up rating it 3 out of 5. It had such good OCD representation, and I wish they would have really focused on that. But the plot was just strange, a missing billionaire, a bounty on his head, essentially. Also, another reason I didn't rate it 4 or 5 stars was because it was missing that signature John Green scene that comes around the climax that is just so funny and makes the entire book worth it. For example, I didn't really like The Abundance of Catherines that much, but that one scene with the hogs and the cemetery and all that crazy stuff, that's all I remember from that book, and it just makes the whole entire book worth it. So yeah, I was really missing that just chapter or two of just absolute chaos and ridiculousness. Yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, next I started trying to finish up the Warrior Cat series that I started last year on a Soviet train because I hate not finishing what I start. To be fair, when I initially started reading this series, I thought it was just 6 books. I'm now maybe 36 into it. I want to do a video over these books and just how how crazy this franchise is. There's so many things I've discovered while looking into this like fandom, I guess. So I read The Apprentice's Quest. There is way too much background information for me to explain to you what is going on in this book, so I'm just gonna say this starts off with a whole new generation of cats. This book is about 4 clans of cats that all reside in the same area, and there's a 5th one that's missing, and this new character in the series, I guess, has to go and find them. It's really slow, not a lot happens in this. Each arc of this series is 6 books long, so some stuff could definitely be combined together. This was definitely a filler book, which is a little disappointing considering it's the first one in this arc, but that's just how it ended up. 3 out of 5, it was okay but slow. It wasn't awful. There's been some awful ones, I'm not gonna lie to you. Okay, next was Thunder and Shadow. This was also a filler. This one introduces some really nice new characters that the cats who went to find the 5th clan find on the way back. There are these 2 kittens that they find. Their character development is so good throughout the series. With how many characters are in this series, it's hard to resonate with a whole lot of them, but these 2 were written really well. So even those 2 really good characters could not save this book. 3 out of 5, it was pretty dull. There wasn't a whole lot of headway made for bringing that 5th clan back, which is like the entire point of this whole arc. So this being just a filler book again is like, it just seems like they're going nowhere basically. Next I read Shattered Sky. There was a really good villain that was introduced in this one, and he kind of like was very deceitful up to this point. There's a lot of backstory going on with one of the other clan's leaders and this horrible villain that's introduced. This one actually had a climax, which was nice. It was good. It was something to like drive the book forward. All of the cats end up having this battle with the horrible villain leader. This series I think tends to struggle with having really good villains because the first 6 books had probably the best one, but this one was probably a close second. All the other ones in the previous arcs were just not it. But yeah, I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars because it had such a good enemy, really likable original characters in those 2 kittens that were found. The concept of a 5th clan was also something they had not done before. A lot of stuff and tropes really get reused in this series, so it was refreshing to have a new plot point. Pretty good pacing. And then I read Darkest Night. This one took a turn back to like filler again. There is a vision that comes to the medicine cats of a 6-toed cat who is supposed to save everyone, so they go out on this trek to find this 6-toed cat who doesn't exist inside the clan, so they have to look elsewhere. So basically they're looking for like strays who have 6 toes. There's an awful like low budget horror movie that I watched in college that I keep thinking of that was called like 7-Toed Maggie. So the main premise of this one is they're going out and looking for a 6-toed cat. They end up finding one. His name is Tree. He has 6 toes, so they bring him back. This cat is also able to see ghosts, dead cats running around. One of the clans ends up completely dissolving and kind of molding into another one. 3 out of 5, it felt like filler and not a lot happened. Then I read River of Fire. A huge plot point in this one is that the entire forest catches on fire. This has only been done one other time. I'll give it to them that this isn't too overdone. Some of the cats get kidnapped by that horrible leader that I mentioned earlier. It's kind of interesting, but it just has no direction. That clan that previously got dissolved in the last book ends up reforming with a new leader, so that's good, I guess, but it's just, there were so many things going on and none of them kind of had any direction. 3 out of 5. So the next one that I read was The Raging Storm. So this 5th clan has been living with the others around the lake for a while, but that clan that ends up reforming with the new leader wants their land back from this 5th one, so they end up driving them out. However, there's this whole like prophecy that says this 5th clan has to live with the other 4 around the lake, or else like they're all going to perish or whatever. But no one can agree on who would be the one to sacrifice land for this 5th clan to live on. So Thunder Clan, which is like the Gryffindor of this series, I guess, ends up kind of like creating a whole band of cats from all of the clans to go find them because bad things are already happening. So they need to go find them and bring them back. It just feels like the same thing happening over and over again. Like they already went and found them and now they're spending a few more books having to go find them again. There's also a cat that's pressuring another cat into like having children. And it's so awful because he's basically like, you don't love me enough to do this for me, but she's not ready. She's like, you don't love me enough to not pressure me. I really did like the characters in this one and the plot was much better, so I gave this one 4 out of 5. So the next one I read was Lost Stars. Oh, also I forgot to mention these cats all have a religion. They worship what is called Star Clan, which is like the 6th clan where it's all like dead spirit cats who give them prophecies, tell them how to live their life. All of the clans end up not being able to contact Star Clan. That 6-toed cat I mentioned mentioned earlier, named Tree, ends up having a kid. He becomes a main character. So this cat is really ashamed of being Tree's son because he can see ghosts and the other cats don't really accept him because he's weird. So he just wants to stop at nothing to not be like his father. This cat has a lot of really good character development. These are some of the best characters they've done since the first arcs. So yeah, they lose touch with the dead cats that they're supposed to be communicating to get messages from and instructions. The leader of ThunderClan, Bramblestar, suddenly becomes very ill, and Shadowpaw, who is the Shadow Clan medicine cat, thinks he's getting messages from StarClan on how to save this leader, and they're giving him really sketchy information. But this book basically ends with the ThunderClan leader getting possessed, which has never happened. I have never heard of a possessed cat, so I actually really liked this premise. All of these cats need an exorcist so bad. It makes me think a little bit of Animal Farm, like the way some of the leaders are kind of represent different like dictatorships. It's about a possessed cat, and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read The Silent Thaw. This really turns ThunderClan into a dystopian environment, which we had never seen before. I really like the way they took this possessed cat and gave him all these traits of like different dictators throughout history. His manipulation tactics are so nuts. He uses religion against these other cats that he's leading, and he intimidates them and uses just really insane punishment that gets progressively worse as it goes on. If you boil a frog slowly, they're not going to realize. This possessed cat also uses the idea of like a fake crisis, or kind of like creating one that isn't really there, and then they tell everybody that the only way to kind of make this stop is through their leadership and the way they say it should be taken care of. I've unfortunately also seen that in the US politics as well. Just the entire psychology of this I think was handled really well, which is not what I was expecting. It also ends on a cliffhanger, and it makes you want to read the next book. I rated this one 4 out of 5 as well. And then the last book that I read in January was Veil of Shadows, which was the third one in the last arc of the Warrior series. So I only have 3 books left. And then there's some like standalones. I don't know if I'm going to take another break or if I'm going to go right into them, if I'm being honest with you. This is a bit much. This book basically details the entire rebel group that wants to take on this possessed leader because he ends up exiling so many of his cats. He has that downfall that a lot of dictators end up having, where they do not trust anybody around them, even the most like loyal people to them. They end up banishing and not trusting. You see this with like Stalin. It's just that paranoia that he has. He's so nervous and he doesn't know what's going on. I mean, he has reason to be nervous because there is an entire band of all the cats that he pushed away who are now trying to overthrow him. That previous son of Tree ends up having a lot of really good character development here. He pretty much just stops overthinking everything and just says, fuck it, like I'm going to do what I can to help everybody, even if people think I'm weird or that I am my father's son. Not gonna give any spoilers away. They pretty much find out why they have not been able to contact StarClan. There's so many parallels here also between the whole half-blood thing from Harry Potter, because there are cats who are half clan, meaning they were born from parents who are from 2 different clans, and that's a no-no. And in times of crisis, those cats are the first to be exiled or banished or punished, which is so screwed up, but like this reflects actual history. I really enjoyed the premise, but this one was filler. It really was just kind of explaining how they were forming against the possessed cat. So I rated this one 3 out of 5. So those are all the books that I read in January. Did I not have a single 5-star book? That's disappointing, but you know, even though I read less last January, I ended up having I think like 2 or 3 5-star books. It's really not the quantity, it's the quality, I've learned. But yeah, I'm going to be doing these reading wrap-ups once a month as just kind of like a bonus video. Let me know what your favorite book you've read this month was down below in the comments. If you want to follow me on my Instagram, it is right here, and if you want to follow me on my TikTok, that is right here. I will see you all in a few days for a music related video, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye guys.